The scent of sawdust and fresh concrete was a perfume I'd worn for 20 years. It was the smell of money, of progress, of building something that would outlast me. But that night, as I stood in my own kitchen, it felt like the scent of failure. My name is Marcus Thorne. I'm 46 years old, and I've been a project superintendent for Apex Construction in St. Louis for the better part of 2 decades. I started humbly, swinging a hammer for my uncle's crew right out of high school, and through blood, sweat, and more than a few broken bones, I'd climb my way to the top. The Gateway Towers project downtown was my crowning achievement, a 40-story monument to glass and steel that was my sole responsibility. But the foundation of my own life was cracking. "You missed another one of Liam's games last night," my wife, Evelyn, said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth that used to greet me. She didn't look up from her iPad, her fingers scrolling through some social feed I didn't understand. I hung my weathered hard hat on its designated hook by the garage door, the ritual feeling heavier than usual. "I told you, Evie, the concrete pour for the West Tower core was scheduled for sunset. The city only gave us an 8-hour window to shut down that street. You know how critical that phase is." Liam scored 2 goals. His coach pulled me aside afterward, said scouts from Mizzou were in the stands. They're interested. A familiar leaden knot tightened in my gut. Missing my son's milestones was a pain I carried constantly, a dull ache I justified with every paycheck. That's amazing, Evie. I'm so proud of him. I'll be there next time, I promise." She finally looked at me then, and what I saw in her eyes made the air leave my lungs. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even disappointment. It was a cold, clinical pity. "Will you, Marcus?" she asked softly, before returning to her screen. That night, I lay rigid in our king-sized bed, staring at the textured ceiling while Evelyn slept with a continent of space between us. Her back was a silent, unscalable wall. The physical distance was just a symptom. The emotional chasm had been widening for over a year. We'd been married for 20 years, together since we were kids at the University of Missouri. She'd been a bright-eyed art history major. I was the pragmatic construction management student. We'd built this life from the ground up. I told myself this was just a phase, the kind of rough patch every long-term marriage endures. But the next morning, the cracks became fissures. I got up early, my body aching from a night spent tense and awake, and went downstairs for coffee. I heard her voice, a hushed, intimate whisper coming from the walk-in pantry. I froze, my hand hovering over the coffee machine. "I know, it's killing me too. Soon, I promise. He's just oblivious. It makes it easier. Okay, tonight. I love you." The line went dead a second before she emerged, her face a perfect mask of domestic normalcy that shattered the moment she saw me. A flash of pure panic, quickly schooled into vague irritation. "You're up early," she said, brushing past me to get a mug. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice sounding strangely calm. "Mom," she said without missing a beat. "Her arthritis is acting up again. You know how she complains." I did know, but her mother lived in Florida, 2 time zones ahead. It was 5:45 a.m. in St. Louis. I simply nodded, poured my coffee into my thermos, and headed for the door. "See you tonight." "Actually," she replied, not meeting my eyes, "I'm having dinner with Chloe. Don't wait up." Chloe, her college roommate, lived in Springfield, a 3-hour drive. For a Wednesday night. I nodded again, a mannequin playing the part of Marcus Thorne, and walked out to my truck. The solid ground of my life was now shifting sand. Evelyn and I had met during my sophomore year. She was vibrant, funny, and saw something in a quiet, work-obsessed guy like me. When my father had a heart attack my junior year, I dropped out to help with the family business and his medical bills. Evelyn never wavered. She'd sit with me in hospital waiting rooms, bring me dinner at various job sites, and held my hand through the terrifying uncertainty of those years. We got married in a small courthouse ceremony when I was 24.
Liam came 2 years later, and our daughter, Hannah, followed 18 months after that. For years, we were a fortress. She understood the construction life, the pre-dawn calls, the weather delays, the deadlines that consumed weekends. She was my biggest cheerleader when I landed the job at Apex, even though it meant moving from our cozy suburb to the city. I worked relentlessly, from foreman to general superintendent, and every promotion was for them, for the college funds, the nice house in the good school district, the security I'd never had as a kid. But the Gateway Towers project was a beast, a $200 million behemoth that demanded everything I had. Somewhere in the 2 years of its gestation, Evelyn had changed. She stopped asking about my day. She started a flurry of new activities, yoga classes, book clubs, weekend retreats with friends. The warning signs were there, blinking like neon, but I was too exhausted, too focused on not failing at work to see them clearly. There were phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room, unexplained charges on a credit card I rarely used, $120 at a spa, $300 at a boutique she claimed was having a massive sale, a new expensive perfume, a receipt I found for a couple's massage at a luxury hotel. When I asked, she laughed it off. It was a girl's day, Marcus. Stop being so suspicious. The damning clue came from Liam himself a weeks prior. We were tossing a football in the backyard when he said, offhandedly, "Mom's new friend seems cool." "New friend?" I asked, my grip tightening on the ball. "Yeah, some guy from her art class. They talk a lot. He has a sweet car." The art class she'd started taking at the community center. "What's his name?" Liam shrugged, suddenly sensing he'd stepped into something he shouldn't have. "Don't know. Forget I said anything." The moment of crystalline, horrifying clarity came on a crisp Tuesday in November. We'd finished the tower's structural framing ahead of schedule, and I decided to knock off early, a rare treat. I'd even picked up a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of her favorite wine, a foolish, hopeful part of me thinking I could bridge the gap between us. I pulled into our driveway and noticed a sleek, black Audi S5 parked a few houses down. Unfamiliar, but in our neighborhood not entirely out of place. I came in through the garage, the flowers in hand, and heard it. Evelyn's laugh. Not the polite, social chuckle she used now, but the real, unfettered, joyous sound I hadn't heard directed at me in over a year. It was followed by a man's low, confident murmur. I stopped, dead in the mudroom, my blood turning to ice. "He's just so clueless," Evelyn was saying. "It's almost pathetic." "You said you were going to tell him weeks ago," the man replied. His voice was smooth, educated, vaguely familiar. "I'm not a patient man, Evelyn. This sneaking around is beneath us." I know. It's just the money, the house. I need to be smart about this. I need to make sure I'm taken care of." "I'll take care of you. You know that. Once you're free of this situation." The word situation felt like a physical blow. I was no longer a husband. I was a situation to be managed, a problem to be solved. I quietly backed out of the house, got in my truck and drove around the block, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the wheel. I gave them 10 minutes, then returned, the flowers now feeling like a prop in a play I hadn't auditioned for. Evelyn was in the kitchen, humming. "You're home early," she said, that practiced, distant smile on her face. "Oh, flowers! What's the occasion?" "No occasion," I said, my voice steady through sheer force of will. "Just thought you might like them." I went upstairs and sat on the edge of our bed, staring at our wedding photo. 20 years. 2 children. A lifetime of shared history, and she was discarding it for a voice in my living room. I didn't rage. I didn't weep. A cold, calculating calm settled over me. This was no longer a marital problem. It was a structural failure, and I knew how to deal with those. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I'd saved years ago during a messy corporate espionage case at Apex. Julian Croft, Private Investigations. He answered on the second ring. "Julian?" "Marcus Thorne." I have a job for you." 3 weeks later, armed with Julian's preliminary report, I decided to test the integrity of Evelyn's lies. The evidence was already damning. Photos of Evelyn with the man I now knew as Carter Beck, her former art professor from college. They'd reconnected on social media 8 months ago. He was now a gallerist with a trendy space in the central West End. Records showed dozens of calls, often lasting hours late into the night. They frequented high-end restaurants and on 2 occasions a boutique hotel near his gallery. The opportunity to probe deeper came when she announced another girls' weekend with Chloe, this time to Kansas City for a gallery opening.
"Chloe's friend is showing her work,"
she explained, a little too casually. "We might stay through Sunday." "Of course," I said, my tone neutral. "The kids and I'll have a guy's weekend. Pizza, movies, the works." She seemed almost disappointed by my lack of resistance. Her entire narrative relied on me being the stubborn, controlling husband. My compliance didn't fit the script. That Friday, I did drop Liam at a friend's house and took Hannah to my sister's. But instead of going home, I drove to a parking garage with a clear view of the valet stand at the Renaissance Hotel. Right on time, at 6:30 p.m., Evelyn's white Lexus SUV pulled up. She emerged, not in her casual travel clothes, but in a stunning, form-fitting emerald green dress I'd never seen before. She handed her keys to the valet with the practiced ease of a regular. 5 minutes later, the black Audi S5 arrived. Carter Beck stepped out, tall, silver-haired, wearing a tailored navy suit. He didn't bother with valet, instead handing a bill to an attendant and gesturing to a self-park lot. They met at the entrance, and he kissed her, not on the cheek, but deeply and possessively on the mouth, his hand resting on the small of her back. I took pictures, my phone's zoom lens capturing every intimate detail. I documented the time, the place, and then I went home to my empty, silent house. Evelyn returned Sunday evening, full of stories about Kansas City's art scene and how exhausting it was to be on her feet all day. She even produced a small abstract ceramic sculpture as proof of her trip. "How was the boys' weekend?" she asked, a subtle challenge in her eyes. "Great," I said, smiling. "We missed you." The following Wednesday, I decided to apply pressure. Over dinner, with both kids at the table, I brought up our finances. With the Gateway Towers bonus coming through, I've been thinking we should finally take that big trip. Maybe 2 weeks in Italy next summer. See the art, the history, all of us together." Liam's eyes lit up. "Seriously? That'd be awesome." Evelyn froze, her fork hovering over her plate. "Italy? Marcus, that's incredibly extravagant. The cost."
"We can afford it," I said smoothly. "We've been careful. We've earned it. It might be one of the last big trips we take before Liam goes off to college." I looked at my son. "Make some memories, right, champ?" Evelyn's face was a mask of confusion and dawning alarm. My sudden shift from absent workaholic to proactive family man was a wrench thrown directly into her carefully constructed gears. Let's not talk about this at the table," she said tightly. But I saw the panic in her eyes. She wasn't planning a future with me. She was planning her exit. That night, I listened outside her closed bedroom door. Her whispered voice was frantic. "He's talking about Italy, Carter. Italy. He's never wanted to go anywhere before. I don't know, it's like he knows something. No, I've been careful, but if he's suddenly wanting to spend money and time with us, it ruins everything. The narrative, Carter, the narrative." The word made me sick. My life, my love for my children had been reduced to a narrative. I went to my home office and called Julian. "I need everything you can get on Carter Beck, financials, business dealings, everything. And I need to know if Evelyn has spoken to a lawyer." Julian's full report arrived a week later in a sealed envelope. I waited until I was alone at the job site, high up in the unfinished penthouse of the Gateway Towers, the whole city spread out beneath me, to open it. The contents were nuclear. Carter Beck was not just a successful gallerist. He was married, with a 9-year-old daughter. His wife, a woman named Isabel, came from old St. Louis money and was the primary investor in his gallery. Furthermore, his business was deeply in debt, surviving only on continuous infusions from his wife's trust fund. The most devastating revelations, however, involved Evelyn.
Julian had obtained copies of emails between her and a high-profile divorce attorney, Regina Sharp, known in legal circles as the Barracuda, for her ruthless tactics in draining husbands of their assets. Evelyn had retained her 3 months prior. Their strategy was meticulously outlined. Paint Marcus as a work-obsessed, emotionally absent father and husband. Use his long hours and dedication to his career against him. Document every missed event, every late homecoming. Secure primary custody of the children to maximize child support and guarantee a larger share of the marital assets, including the house and a significant portion of my future earnings and pension from Apex. They had timelines, lists of evidence, and even notes on how to guide the children's perceptions in mediation. But the most gut-wrenching find was financial. Julian had traced a series of deposits into a new bank account Evelyn had opened in her maiden name. The money wasn't from Carter. He had none to give. It was from the joint account I funded, our savings for the kids' college and our retirement. She'd been siphoning off thousands of dollars for months, likely to pay Regina Sharp's exorbitant retainer, all while letting me work myself to the bone to keep our family afloat. She was funding her own war chest with my own money. I looked out over the city I'd helped build, the skyline I'd shaped, and felt a profound, soul-crushing emptiness. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, it was beyond anger. It was a cold, dark fact. I didn't go home that night. I went to see my own lawyer, an old friend named David Chen who specialized in corporate law but had a razor-sharp mind for strategy. I spread Julian's report on his mahogany desk. David read it in silence, his expression growing grimmer with each page. "Marcus, this is egregious. The dissipation of marital assets alone, using joint funds to hire a lawyer to sue for more joint funds, is a level of gall I rarely see. And the parental alienation strategy. Judges hate that." "What do we do?" I asked, my voice hollow. "We don't play defense. We play offense," David said, a steely glint in his eye. "We file first. Tomorrow, we file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and we request an emergency hearing for temporary custody and a freeze on all marital assets. We hit them with this entire report in the initial filing. We don't give Regina Sharp a second to breathe." He brought in his associate, a fiercely intelligent woman named Maria Flores who specialized in family law. "We need to be surgical. We'll also be notifying Carter Beck's wife, Isabel, of these findings. I suspect her financial support for his extracurricular activities will dry up rather quickly, which in turn will cripple his ability to be your wife's future. And we'll be requesting the court appoint a guardian ad litem for the children immediately, a neutral party to assess their well-being and see through any, coaching." The plan was set. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. I went home, I played the part of the oblivious husband, but I was gathering my own evidence. I recorded conversations, legal in our state. I engaged with my children more than ever, not as a strategy, but as a genuine, desperate attempt to reconnect with them before the storm hit. I took Liam to practice. I helped Hannah with her science project. I made pancakes on Sunday morning. Evelyn watched it all with growing, poorly concealed anxiety. Her plan required a villain. I was refusing to play the part. "What's with you lately?" she finally snapped one evening as I was helping Hannah with her algebra. "You're never home this much." "The project's in a good place," I said calmly, "and I realized you were right. I've missed too much. I'm trying to do better." The lie tasted like ash, but it was necessary. She had no response, just turned and walked away, her phone already in her hand. I filed on a Tuesday morning. By 10 a.m., a process server was handing the thick packet of documents to a stunned Evelyn in our driveway. My phone rang 30 seconds later. "What is this, Marcus?" she screamed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and terror. "How could you do this? How could you lie about me like this?" "It's not lying if it's true, Evelyn," I said, my voice cold and flat. I was standing on the top floor of the Gateway Towers, the wind whipping around me. Carter Beck, the Renaissance Hotel, Regina Sharp, the $15,000 you transferred from Liam's college fund could pay her. Should I go on? The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost hear her world shattering. Marcus, please, we can talk about this. You should call your lawyer. I'm sure Regina will be very interested in the evidence of felony theft and fraud we've uncovered. Goodbye, Evelyn. I hung up and turned off my phone. The emergency hearing was a bloodbath. David and Maria were pitiless and precise. They presented the photos, the financial records, the emails with her attorney outlining the alienation strategy. They called Julian to testify to his findings. When they presented the evidence of her draining our son's college fund, the judge, a stern woman named Judge Wilkins, looked at Evelyn with open disgust. Evelyn, flanked by a flustered and outmaneuvered Regina Sharp, could only sit in stunned silence. Carter Beck was notably absent. Marietta had made sure Isabel Beck received a full copy of the report. He was likely fighting for his own financial survival at home. The court finds ample evidence of dissipation of assets, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a concerted campaign of parental alienation, Judge Wilkins stated, her voice echoing in the quiet room. Temporary full custody of the minor children is granted to Mr. Thorne. Mrs. Thorne is granted supervised visitation to be determined by the family court counselor. Furthermore, all marital assets are hereby frozen, and Mrs. Thorne is ordered to provide a full accounting for every penny withdrawn from the children's educational accounts. This court is appalled. Evelyn moved out that weekend. The fallout was swift and brutal. The story, as these things do, got out. Her reputation in her social circles evaporated. Carter Beck's wife filed for divorce, seizing control of the gallery and leaving him penniless and publicly humiliated. Regina Sharp, facing potential sanctions for her role in the unethical strategy, dropped Evelyn as a client entirely. The custody evaluation was a long, painful process, but it was cathartic. Without Evelyn's constant whispering, the truth emerged. Liam broke down one night, confessing how his mother had constantly quizzed him on my absences, encouraging him to be angry with me. Hannah, through tears, admitted she'd seen Evelyn with Carter and had been sworn to secrecy, told that Daddy would be angry and break up the family if he found out. The final settlement was a total victory for me and a desolate loss for Evelyn. She received no alimony. She was forced to sign a quitclaim deed on the house. She was ordered to repay from her share of the divided assets every dime she had taken from the college funds. She got a small car and a fraction of what she had expected. Most importantly, I was granted full custody, with her receiving only limited, supervised visitation every other weekend. She moved to a small apartment across the river in Illinois and found work as a receptionist at a dental office. The vibrant, social woman she had become was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out stranger. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, the Gateway Towers project was completed to great acclaim. My bonus was substantial. I took Liam and Hannah on a trip, not to Italy, but to Colorado. We hiked, whitewater rafting, and spent our evenings talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Standing on a mountain peak with my children, watching the sun set over the Rockies, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. The foundation of my life had been tested with brutal force. The weak materials, the deceit, the betrayal, had crumbled to dust. But what was left, what my children and I had rebuilt together on the bedrock of honesty and resilience, was stronger than anything I had ever built with concrete and steel. Evelyn faced the consequences of her choices every day. Financially precarious, socially isolated, and estranged from the children she tried to manipulate, she was a living lesson in the price of treachery. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. And sometimes the most complete and satisfying revenge is not a dramatic act of vengeance, but simply living a good, honest life and allowing those who wronged you to face the unforgiving weight of their own choices.